Now, in this segment of the show, we will be focusing on an outstanding Antiguan and Barbudan, a writer, a journalist, a poet, Joanne Hillhouse. She is one of Antigua's most prolific writers. Joanne's books include the poetry collection On Becoming, 2003, the novellas The Boy from Willow Bend in 2003, and Dancing Nude in the Moonlight, 2004. The children's books Fish Out of Water and With Grace, the novel Oh Gad in 2012, and the young adult novel Musical Youth, 2014, which was a runner-up for the Burt Award for Caribbean Literature. Joanne was named by Literary Hub as one of the 10 female Caribbean authors you should know. She's an advocate for the development of the arts in Antigua and Barbuda, and she founded the Wadadley Youth Pen Prize in 2004. Just last month, Hillhouse was awarded the prestigious AnthonyNSabga Award for Arts and Letters. And she's going to collect that award in June, I gather. We celebrate local heroes. We celebrate local heroes. And we are very honored to have in the house, right here in studio, Joanne Hillhouse to talk about her very illustrious literary career. Good morning, Joanne, and welcome to Observer.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you very much for the invite. I must, because my books are kind of like my children, I must acknowledge the ones that you left out.
Oh, yes. Which one is that?
Well, Lost the Caribbean Sea Adventure, that's another children's book. The Jungle Outside is another children's book. And forthcoming in July, I have To Be a Cheetah.
To Be a Cheetah. That sounds like it's going to be an intriguing one.
It's a bedtime story. It's another children's book.
It's a children's book.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am working on more adult fare, but the children's stories have come of late in part through my interaction with my little people. So
Right. Very good. Now, I know a lot about you, Joanne, having worked with you in broadcasting, in journalism. So for those people of our audience, listening and viewing, who don't know you, tell us a little about Joanne Hillhouse.
That's a very broad question. Joanne Hillhouse, the girl from Otters, Antigua.
The girl from Otters, Antigua.
Yeah. I was born and raised in the community of Otters. I am one of three. I went to Holy Family and Christ the King, State College, University of the West Indies, where I did my degree in communications, and I've worked in media, I've worked in environmental education, I've freelanced, worked independently for a number of years while continuing to do my creative writing. And I'm also the columnist with Observer of the Creative Space column.
That's right. That's right. Now, tell us a little about your childhood, growing up in Otters, going to school, and what are some of the things that might have shaped you in that community?
Well, I think if you've read The Boy from Willow Bend, you've probably seen some of it. Some of the images that come immediately to mind are just that image in the book of the willow trees at night. That's when, from the Camachos Avenue part of Otters, then the butterflies, the hedges, catching the butterflies and just wandering and picking fruits and terrorizing animals and
And living carefree.
yeah. So it was, and even the whole community of us that would go to school every morning was a long trek of all the Holy Family Otters kids through ovals, walking up Cross Street, and we were never allowed to walk on East Street. It was called then Independence Avenue.
Independence Avenue.
So just that whole community, and like you said, a kind of what they would call, I guess now, free range parenting, in the sense that we didn't have the helicopter thing happening where your parents were, our parents were strict, but they didn't want us on the foot all the time. So you had room to adventure and to discover and to explore and to play. So
And play you did all of those old games.
Yes, everything.
Yes. Now, when did you discover that you had something in you, that gift, you were blessed with that gift to be creative, to write?
I don't know specifically when I became aware of it. My dad tells me that before I could read the books, I would tell the stories, like I would read the
What?
pictures. I'm aware of daydreaming a lot in class, especially in primary school, like, in the social studies books where you'd see the family and stuff. I'd be making up stories, like I'd be filling in the blanks of their lives. So I feel like, and I still do that, I'm still always filling in the blanks. And I think that's what a lot of writing is. You kind of grabbing things from life, and then by the time you put it down, it's this distorted thing. But I don't think I ever knew that could become a profession, because I didn't know any writers like that of the printed word from Antigua when I was coming up. I always said that the Calypso writers, like Shelley Tobit, someday I'd love to interview him. He's very elusive, but to me, he's one of our greatest writers.
Yes.
And so all those songs that I grew up listening to would have been hugely impactful in my journey as a writer. I always loved to read. I read everything, anything, billboards, posters. I actually still have a bad habit when I'm driving around or walking around of editing some of the billboards. Yeah, it's a bad habit because I'm also an editor, so
That's
it's kind of
right.
instinctive that you kind of somebody needed to check that over. So,
Right.
So it's to answer your question, it's kind of in you, and then I guess the journey was to accept that this is what I have to be. And I have to figure out how to make it so, because there was no template for what I wanted to do that I could see.
Were you doing a lot of writing, essay writing or story writing in primary and secondary school?
I was, especially I would say in the secondary school years, I would enter, the independent stuff, the tourism stuff, in terms of the competitions, Tourism Week competition, independence competitions. In fact, my first writing prize, I think it's my first, I won a trip with the independence competition. I remember I was so young that my mom had to send my sister with me. And
Where did you?
we went to Barbados. We
Oh,
spent,
lovely.
Yeah. So that was my first, win of anything that I can think of. But I was writing a lot, I would say, during my teen years, because those are the years when you're kind of lost and confused and trying to find yourself. And I always say that if you can find something to express or explore what you're feeling, then you can work through it. And I find that when we talk a lot about young people nowadays and we don't have the kind of programs that can help them find those avenues, it's a problem that they're not bad. They're discovering themselves. They're lost, and they're trying to find their way in the world. And for me, writing, I would say 100 times saved my life. So, and helped me find my way. And to this day, helps me figure out how I'm feeling. It's how I process life.
Right. It sort of grounds you.
Yeah.
Now, what inspires you to write? How do you get your inspiration? How do you begin to craft a story, start to write a novel?
I don't know how to answer that without giving you some examples. So I'll give you two. I'll give you a recent example, and I'll give you an example related to the forthcoming book, because one is kind of more complex. So sometime this week, I have my journals here. I write in these journals.
Okay.
And I have
you can show on.
I have them with me all the time. So if you see me writing, it's a combination of journaling and working on stories and working on poems and so on. So I opened the paper sometime this week. So the short answer is life is what inspires me.
Right.
I opened the paper sometime this week and I saw that the magistrate's court key was missing, and so the court couldn't happen, and that's a farce. That's just farcical, just on the face of it.
It happened. It's
right?
reality,
right? So, but farce is a genre in writing. So it's like taking the absurd and like that's this like we say Antigua is not a real country.
That's right. That can't.
Well, that's one of those. That's one of those. So I ended up writing a story. At least I started feverishly writing about just off of that premise, not about the court, not about the situation specifically. So I guess that's one entry into how I write, is that something triggers it, but then it becomes its own thing. And as I'm writing it, I'm discovering what it is. So as I wrote this story, it really became about what the community has lost by having that building taken away from them. And I say that because I feel strongly about that, because we talk about young people, and that was supposed to be a community space for young people, as I understood it.
Yes.
And it's been years. And so that's where the story went, with my sort of aggravation with that idea that we say, what's going wrong with them? But we don't. This is something that was for them, and we took it away. And now the key is missing. And so I just found it kind of funny, but it actually became more serious than funny. So that's one way that the story became about a mother and a daughter, actually. I haven't edited it yet. I haven't transcribed it yet. So it's still just very fresh. But I find that I write a lot about relationships, because it's probably also trying to work through my own relationships. But on a lighter note, To Be a Cheetah is a children's picture book that started with my nephew saying he wish he could go to Africa to be a cheetah. And I was like, why? Those idiotic conversations that you have with kids when they're saying stuff that makes perfect sense to them, but it's kind of...
So it's cheetah.
Cheetah. Sorry, CHEETAH. Yeah.
You know, when you first said it,
Not
and you
cheetah.
said to be a cheetah, I thought this is an adult novel.
No,
you know?
no.
Cheetah.
I mean, I am trying my hand at a novel in that vein at the moment, but no, this is To Be a Cheetah.
Yes.
Cheetah.
The animal.
The animal, yeah.
Very fast.
So we had that sort of nonsensical. I'm using nonsensical to say that we had that conversation about, okay, why would you want to do that, and then what, kind of like improv, when you're kind of just going with the absurdity of the premise. And I ended up writing a poem based on that conversation, which I gave to him as a present. I laminated it and gave it to him as a present, and he still has it in his room. I think he appreciates it now more than then, because at the time he probably just wanted like a train set or something, and I gave him, okay, what am I supposed to do with this poem? You always give him bad gifts. But
that's a beautiful gift, actually.
But no, it's a book, because I showed it to my agent, and she was like, I think we could sell this. So editing, then she started submitting it, and got lots of very positive rejections. And then
oh dear me, why you put it that way? Positive rejections.
Lots of positive, some of the nicest rejections I've had in my writing career. This is very lyrical writing. This is so beautiful. But not for us. Not for us. But eventually, Sunbird Books. And what I'm happy about with this book is that I've been able to bring an Antiguan artist along with me, because I kind of twinned us. When I took it to my agent, I said, she's the artist, and so she represented both of us, which is unusual in publishing children's book.
Right.
Normally they buy the text and then hire their own illustrator. So Xavier Archibald is I would say co-author, because she's the illustrator on this, who came on board from before it was a book. She was the one I went to, and she started doing character sketches and so on. So that started from a conversation with my nephew. I might open the paper and see something. I might be having deep feelings or not being able to access deep feelings. I remember during the pandemic, I got a commission to do a story in the Caribbean Sky Islands verse, a speculative fiction verse. And I was so depressed at the time that I didn't think I could write anything. And what I ended up having to do was write that depression into the story. And so the character was very depressed and trying to work out of her depression, all while dealing with a world that's very different from our world. So it's about being open to the world around me and processing everything that I wonder, that I'm curious about, that I'm feeling, that I want to know, that I want to understand through it. All that amuse and anger me.
Excellent, excellent. We have to take a quick break.
Your voice counts. Your questions are answered. This is Observer AM.
Welcome back to Observer AM. It is 8:38 in Antigua and Barbuda, and we're talking with author Joanne Hillhouse about her illustrious literary career. Now, you have written, Joanne, a bevy of novels, novellas, short stories, poetry, children's books, and so on, which have had international and regional acclaim. How challenging was it for you to move out of the broadcasting journalism space and to begin focusing on your writing?
I think not as well difficult, I guess, logistically, but in terms of doing what I really wanted to do, that was the easy part. It was finally stepping into my purpose more than anything. But I mean, once you step into your purpose, now you got to figure out how to make it work, and that has been the challenge over the years. So you say, for instance, when you say illustrious career just now, my brain went,
Why?
Because I'm still a journeying.
You're being too modest.
No, I'm being realistic. I'm a
Okay.
journeying writer in the sense that this award that I've gotten is a breakthrough. I'm not going to deny that, and I feel extremely grateful. And it feels like it could be game changing for me. But the journey to this point has been, the hills and valleys that Ian Van Zandt would have spoken about all
That's
those years
right.
ago. And the thing that keeps you going through the hills and valleys is that this is your dream, this is your purpose, this is your passion. So it means submitting things, all those things that I've published. It means that I've had 1,000 times more rejections, right? Because you are submitting to journals that don't know you from Adam, don't know your work from Adam, whether they're in the Caribbean, whether in Canada, the US, the UK, but you get up and you submit again. And so that's what I've done consistently over the years. I mean, I get up and I find a market and I submit to it. An example of how one of those things happened, I have a story called Amelia at Devil's Bridge in Pepperpot, Best New Stories from the Caribbean. That was a story that I submitted to the Commonwealth Short Story Competition. It did not win. It did not place. As
Right.
far as I know, it wasn't even in the running. And then the organizers reached out to what they thought of as the best of the ones who didn't place from that competition from the Caribbean, and we were published in that book. That book took me to Trinidad for the Bocas Fest, took me to Scotland for the I Write Festival, took me to New York for the Penn World Voices Festival. And that story is now excerpted in the Collins English A Revision Guide.
Wow.
So you see the end work, but that was a lot of rejection.
Yes,
And
along
to
the
that
way,
point, that point, even with that one competition, a lot of rejection to that point, and not even placing in the competition, but then them looking at the rest. And from that, other opportunities will open up. So it's about persevering through the rejections. So when you say illustrious, yes, I'm not going to deny, I'm not being false. I'm not going to deny that I've accomplished things, but I want people to be aware that, especially being an artist in the Caribbean, because we don't have the arts infrastructure, we don't have governments that prioritize the arts, we're not a priority. And so every ounce of thing, we have to work for it. And if every push beyond our borders, we have to be our biggest champion and our biggest advocate, even through the rejections. So the rejections and the rises, the valleys and the hills, it's all part of the journey.
Right. Now, what would you regard as your major achievement? I know this AnthonyNSabga Award is coming up in June, a big gala affair. But looking over your entire career, would you point out one major achievement that you are enormously proud of?
It's not one, Jackie. When I got my first piece, when I got accepted to my first international workshop at the University of Miami, that was huge at the time because it was
Yes.
like, can I get into those spaces? when I published my first international piece, that was a poem in a journal called Macomere. That was a huge step. When I got my contract for my first book, The Boy from Willow Bend, and
That's right.
and seeing that book, holding the cover of the book in my hand, I remember the PR person, the publicity person, showing me the cover. We were sitting at a restaurant on the beach at Dickinson Bay, and it's like, oh my God, I'm seeing my cover for the first time. Because up to that point, you don't know if you're ever gonna, you don't know if it's gonna happen, right? And so every milestone like that is huge. After The Boy from Willow Bend and Dancing Nude in the Moonlight, for a long time after, I wondered if I had plateaued, if I was never going to get another opportunity. And then Oh God happened. And Oh God happened with Simon & Schuster in the U.S., which is one of the big 5 publishers. So that was huge. Getting Oh God recommended in weekend reads on NPR, that was huge at the time. It's like, that gave it, I mean, I had opened up my audience a huge amount, both the publication and the places the book was being recommended in. When I won, I shouldn't say won, I was a finalist. I was the second place, so first runner-up for the Burt Award with Musical Youth. That felt like a resurgence. Musical Youth felt like a resurgence. I felt excited about everything again, and it was a huge opportunity. And because of the way the prize was structured, I knew the book would find its way into the hands of readers, because they were going to buy X amount of books. That's actually been my biggest payday, has been up until this
Musical
point,
Youth?
was Musical Youth.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Because it the prize, between the prize and the publishing agreement, that's a partnered with the prize, so you have automatic sales, you know it's going to go through. And then it went into a second print, and just so I would say Musical Youth was a big one, and it's the one book that kids meet me on the street and be like, oh, Saharan Shaka, hashtag goals and stuff. Like, you're like, okay, if the kids are resonating with it, I'm happy, because I wrote it for them. And then when I found myself writing children's books, one of the ones, I'm happy for each one of them, but each one of them in a different way. So that's why I say, long story short, each one is a milestone. So it's hard to pick just one. It's like picking your favorite child, really.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this award, the AnthonyNSabga Award, tell us about this. How did you discover that you were nominated? And the ceremony is coming up for all the laureates in June. Tell us a little about it for those persons who don't know.
Well, I knew about the AnthonyNSabga Award because I kind of stay plugged into the different opportunities that are out there, in part because through Wadadley Pen, I try to let other artists know. So we have, Wadadley Pen has a website. I'm the web person. Everything on Wadadley Pen I upload. And so I update the opportunities. So this journal is open. This contest deadline is coming up. All that is there to let other artists and writers know, whether it's local, regional, or international, these are things you can go for. And it's usually things that I'm also going for.
Right.
The AnthonyNSabga Award has been won in terms of arts and letters, which is they have laureates in 4 areas: civic work, that's community work,
science and technology,
entrepreneurship, science, technology, and arts and letters. The arts and letters laureates, the arts and letters laureates in the past have been people like Marlon James, who is winner of the Man Booker Prize, Kai Miller, who is an acclaimed Jamaican writer as well. How did I find out? I got an email from a member of the OECS, because the SABGA has nominating committees, I think, in each region.
Yes.
So I got an email from somebody from this OECS nominating committee saying that they were going to put me forward and asking me to submit referees who could speak on my behalf. And so I did that, and so they put a dossier together to recommend me.
Right.
And then I got the call many months later that I was selected. Could have knocked me over with a feather, because again, when you look at the pedigree of the prize, Antigua is a small place. Not being falsely humble, but we do get left out of a lot of things, even within the Caribbean space. So I was extremely. It was it was affirming to the journey, not just to me, and not just to me as an individual, but to the journey as a writer, and for me, because I'm always thinking about Antigua and Barbuda, to Antigua and Barbuda and OACS as well.
And the prize, the laureates get quite a substantial gift as well from that award.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So in a way, this is like reward, sweetening, your labor.
There've been a lot of ups and downs, so I am going to receive it with gratitude.
Exactly. Now, tell us, Joanne, what are you passionate about? What are the things that inspire you, that move you? And I want to sort of reference journalism, because there's so many young journalists and writers who perhaps don't see that distance, that the opportunities. How have you twinned your journalism and your creative writing to get to this point?
Well, I'm going to use creative space as an example. When I started in journalism, when you're working in journalism in a small market like Antigua, you're kind of an all-purpose sort of reporter. Today you're covering sports, tomorrow you're covering
court,
yeah,
or parliament.
Yeah, and it's really not ideal, but it's not ideal in the sense that you can't really dive in as deep as you would if you were like an expert in an area. But it kind of primes you to be aware.
Yeah,
and it keeps you curious. It can keep you angry too, but
everything that's happening you have to deal with.
So I would say I'm curious about a lot of things. Like, I'm always a person that wants to learn more. Yeah. So when I have the opportunity to choose my assignment, it's always things that I want to understand or discover or find out more about. So that, for instance, in a recent creative space, I spoke to Tashika Levan about her journey to Africa, because I had known how she had left, and so I was curious. It was like, I'm interested in human interest stories as well. So I was curious about her journey and what it's like to go back to the mother. And we had a really, really good conversation. You can look it up on my Antiguan Writer YouTube channel for the video. And it was really just that. I was curious. That was my intention stepping into it. I want to know more. And so I suppose if I have a passion for anything in that space, it's the desire to know more and to tell the stories that I also think that, again, the mainstream is not as aware that this is an interesting story. Like, we all always focused on the court stuff and the police stuff and the politics stuff, and there's so many other interesting stories in the gaps that we're missing. So those are the stories that interest me. And the arts, 100% all the time.
Yes. We have to take a quick break for...
Your voice counts. Your questions are answered. This is Observer AM.
Welcome back to Observer AM. We are having a conversation with author Joanne Hillhouse. Joanne, during the break, we were talking about some of the things that you would like to see as an author who has attained such a great height in not only Antigua but around the world. What would you like to see in developing creative writing, poetry, prose among our young people? I think you might have hinted at it in an earlier answer.
I would like for it not to be as hard for the people coming up behind me as it has been for me. Yeah. So first of all, when I published my first book, I started Wadadli Pen, the Wadadli Youth Pen Prize.
Yes.
I started it to step into the void. Because for me, up to that point, I mentioned the independence and the tourism competition. Those are actually like one-offs at the time.
Yeah.
There was no consistent thing encouraging, promoting, nurturing the literary arts. And so that's what I wanted to do. We started off with a prize, an annual prize. We've done workshops over the years. We've done, the Wadadli Pen the website has become a repository for Antiguan and Barbudan literary and media history. And also, as I said, stockpiles information that can be useful to other writers and artists. I did all of that because all that is what I thought was needed.
Right.
I had to do that along with different people who worked with me over the years as volunteers. None of this is paid work, to keep it going consistently as voluntary work. We get calls sometimes as artists to go into the schools. Again, if we can, we can, but there's no program.
Yes, it
right?
should be a set.
There's no program. There's no acknowledgement that artists need to pay bills, because APA will cut us off as quickly as the other person.
Right.
Right? So artists need to be resourced. They need to have opportunities, and they need constant development programs. I remember when Barbara Arundel, she was they had a literary arts competition for independence at one point, and she was the coordinator. And when she resigned, she read a public letter, an open letter. The minister was in the audience, culture people in the audience, and she said that this is the last year she's doing it. You can read the letter on the website. I'm just paraphrasing. The letter is on the Wadadley Penn website. And the headline for the letter is endorsed, ! Right? And she said, you need a literary arts coordinator. You need someone whose responsibility is literary arts.
Right.
In other Caribbean countries, you have, in Barbados, they have a laureate program, which is a poet laureate who is responsible for literary arts programs. You have, in Jamaica, you have the poet laureate program. In the BVI, so you have either a writer in residence or a poet laureate or some kind of program where someone is for a year, 2 years, 3 years, rotating it so other writers can get opportunities.
Right.
Who is like, okay, what are some things you'd like to do? I'm sure I'm not the only one who has proposed taking writing programs into the schools, after school activity. So I'm saying what you need is consistency. If I had to put a word on it and underline it, it's not one-off things.
Yes.
It's consistency. And consistency with an eye towards not only showcasing but also developing. So developmental projects and showcase activities like we had with Soothe and was coming up with the art week minus literary arts. So you need consistency. Khan is at Culture now. I know Khan is an artist. He's young and he's motivated, and I'm hoping that he will be transformative, but he needs help. He needs the resources behind him as well. I know that Hazra Medica, she has started the database where artists can register their, what they do and so on. So she's doing a lot, some of the stuff in that space, because they now have a resources opportunities page as well. So I'm glad to see that kind of thing is happening. But consistency is what we need towards development and towards showcasing. And it doesn't always have to come from the Treasury. There's so many opportunities out there that artists need technical support in accessing, grant opportunities, etc. So that's just
a lot. You've given a lot of food for thought in that response, actually. Someone on the board says, Jackie, as a daughter of the soil, I really think Joanne's books, poems, etc. should be introduced into our schools. Also, her books should form a part of the texts used in literature for CXC. She's a decorated and well-accomplished writer, and there should be a push to get her writing as part of our curriculum. I don't know if you want to respond to that, and my tech is telling me it's time to wind up. And perhaps you can also answer how you'd like to be remembered by Antiguans and Barbudans. No, I like to have all our heroes and sheroes document for Antiguans and Barbudans how they would like to see themselves remembered.
Okay, so I will say in terms of the books, I have been fortunate through the efforts of my publishers to have 2 of my books be on the school's reading list.
Yes.
The Boy from Willow Bend and Musical Youth have been on the school's reading list. The publisher for the study guide, as I said, excerpted one of my stories in the study guide. So I know that I have had some, I'm not on the CXC stuff. I don't know how to get onto that. Somebody will have to advocate there. And because other writers have said to me, how I do think that, the books on the list need to be refreshed Obviously rigorously interrogated for quality and all that, but refreshed as well so that more local writers can get into that space. I feel just as passionately about the books, the stories I tell, as about the opportunities that I have embraced to create opportunities for others. So if I want to, I'm a gal from Antigua. I'm a writer trying to tell her stories, and I'm someone trying to clear the path for other people as well.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure sitting and pricking your brain a little, Joanne. We always seem to run out of time when we start get interesting people like this on the show. We have come to the end of another Observer AM. It has been a pleasure keeping your company.